Hello and welcome to Gareth Icke Tonight. Small boat crossings of illegal immigrants into England have now hit 50,000 since Labour took control of the UK with a mandate to, in their words, smash the gangs. That's an unvetted male migrant entering the now borderless nation every 11 seconds. Completely unsustainable numbers, even for the most fluoride calcified refugees welcome placard waver. It's not sustainable because it isn't meant to be. People are slowly waking up to the fact that none of this is happening organically and none of it is down to government incompetence. Yes, Starmer, Lammy, Miliband, Reeves and the rest of the Labour front bench are a gaggle of ignoramuses, but it isn't them that ultimately make the decisions. That role falls to the permanent government, those whose names you don't hear and faces you don't see on the 10 o'clock news. The high-ranking civil servants maintain their roles no matter what colour rosette has its name above the door of Downing Street. That's why it's an irrelevance what government the people elect, whether it be Tories saying stop the boats or Labour claiming they will smash the gangs. Nothing changes for the better and the number of people entering the country goes up. The hardest to fathom realisation that growing numbers of people are awaking to is that the traffickers aren't in fact the Russians or the Chinese, as the establishment media would have you believe. It isn't even the gangs that are putting migrant men into dinghies in northern France. Sure, the gangs are playing their role, but they're facilitators, not instigators. Even at the most basic level, because it goes a lot deeper than this, but even at the most basic level, if the government wasn't housing the boat riders in hotels and now social housing, then the incentive wouldn't be there to get in the boat in the first place. The UK government are in fact the traffickers and the gangs are merely a cog in that very well-greased machine. The intentional destruction of this nation and many other nations in the West have many cogs and it infiltrates every single aspect of our daily lives. So in recent weeks, I've started looking at the West, but more specifically the UK, through the lens of someone that wants to destroy it. What would I do? What would I attack? Who would I attack? Well, I'd attack the natives for a start. Through mass unfiltered immigration, I would change demographics and community cohesion, and I would attack the natives for resisting. I would marginalise, disenfranchise and demoralise them. I'd make their lives miserable, joyless, void of purpose and meaning. I would attack their communities, their places of social interaction, the high street, the pub. I'd attack them financially through cost of living and by cutting funding to the most vulnerable of them. I'd defund community programs, particularly for the youth. You see, the natives are the ones in any nation that are going to be the most willing to fight for it. They have a connection to the land, to the history, to the culture. I'd want to take away their desire to fight by making them feel like there's nothing left to fight for. I'd change the culture of the nation through, in part, immigration and pandering to other cultures over that of the nation. But I'd also do it in the classroom and at the earliest opportunity. Got to get them young. Make the next generations, the adults of tomorrow, feel guilty for their heritage, guilty for their history, and even guilty for the colour of their skin. Tell them at every opportunity that they're privileged, even when in many cases that couldn't be further from the truth. Because why would anyone fight to save something they've been conditioned to be ashamed of? I'd attack individual demographics and set them against each other so as to negate any future unity among the masses. I'd set young against old, men against women, black against white, straight against gay. I'd attack reality. 2 + 2 = 5, and women have penises. I'd attack masculinity because masculinity says no to my destructive ideas. I'd attack women's only spaces to create fear, children's spaces to create even more fear, and chaos. Chaos, always chaos, because people want order out of the chaos, and I can offer them that if they just hand me what little freedoms they have left in exchange. Another great way to create fear, chaos, and financial hardship, and therefore dependence, is war. I'd consistently pick fights with other nations, big, scary, powerful nations like, China, Russia. I'd want lots of war, but only really for now, the perception of it. So maybe a Cold War of sorts, an endless one that's always just on the verge of kicking off, so I can terrify the population into accepting surveillance and increased military spending rather than, spending the people's money on the people. I'd attack the food supply by making food production unsustainable, whether it be financially or through red tape. I'd make feeding the nation even more difficult. Actually, and I don't know if anyone's ever thought of this, I would pay farmers not to produce food. It's a mad idea, isn't it? I know. This would create scarcity, which drives up prices, further impoverishing the people and creating state dependence. You can eat, but only if you do as we say. Only if you're up to date with your boosters and your digital ID that we've introduced to combat the mass immigration we've facilitated says your social credit score is good little citizen enough for you to have some cricket-based burgers. I'd buy up farmland and cover it in useless solar panels using billions of pounds of the now skint taxpayers' money. I'd blow up coal-powered power stations, close collieries, block gas drilling licenses, and instead insist that the nation be reliant on useless and massively taxpayer-subsidised renewable energy. I'd make travel unaffordable because I wouldn't want people seeing other areas of the nation and twigging that this is being done everywhere and not by accident. And that brings me to the final most important part of my plan to destroy the nation. I would attack freedom of speech. I would make speaking the truth a crime. I'd make thinking the truth a crime. And I would make seeing the truth impossible. I'd introduce legislation to ban freedom of speech and to ban content that I don't want the public to see from their gaze. I'd frame it as protecting the people, of course. I'd say it's to protect the kids or to protect minorities from hate speech. But of course, that would simply be the sales pitch to get the legislation over the line because I care not for the kids and I care not for minorities and anyone else for that matter. I care about achieving the goal of destroying the nation. And a major hindrance to me enacting the many points I've listed would be the exposure of the plan. That is why I would so aggressively attack, demonize, and censor those exposing me. Now, this is just me riffing. This is what I'd do if my desire was to destroy the United Kingdom. Any connections between my hypothetical plan and the actual realities of the UK's domestic policy are completely coincidental, of course. Coming up on the show, independent disability trainer and consultant Simon Wilson offers disability services through his company Simon's Able, and he's here to raise awareness about the impact of the UK government's disability cuts. And cardiologist Dr. Peter McCullough joins author John Leake on the line from the US to discuss the fallout from the mass COVID vaccine rollout, as well as the effects of the vaccine schedule in general. But first, Sall Grover is an Australian businesswoman and founder of Giggle, a female-only social media app. Sall launched Giggle for Girls with her mother as a safe space for females to connect, find roommates, jobs, etc. The app took off and grew in popularity immediately, but has since been embroiled in a legal battle in Australia over the exclusion of a transgender woman by the name of Roxan Tickle. Sall joins us now. Sall, thank you so much for joining us. What inspired you to start the Giggle app in the first place?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. Basically, it's a kind of long story short, I was a screenwriter in Hollywood for 10 years, from 24 to, just about 34. I'd come back to Australia. I was a shell of a person. Hollywood's as disgusting as you think it is. It was pre-Me Too and all of that stuff had happened. And I went and did a little bit of therapy just to sort of get back on track. It was my therapist that said, you need a strong female support network in your life. And it was a really big light bulb moment for me. And my mum and I just started talking about it, of like it just very quickly, it was in one conversation, it was like, let's create an app for women. So basically you could have a female support network in the palm of your hand. It just seemed like a really good idea. So in short, it was nothing about the drama and controversy that's happening now. It came from a place of stuff that was actually happening to women, and never in a million years did I think that creating an app for women would have become, essentially what it's become. It's absolutely blindsided me.
Well, I mean, the legal stuff, we'll get onto the legal stuff. That is kind of blown my mind a little bit, actually, when I was reading up on that. Was there much opposition at all to the Giggle app from the start? You know, when you say you started it before all this kind of stuff kicked off, was there anyone opposing what you were doing, saying, oh, that's, what would they say, sexist, I suppose?
So when we were developing it, no, it was actually very breezy and easy. And when you're actually developing an app and it's going on the App Store and Google Play, you actually have to get approval with each. It's got to build, like each build of the app, like each time like a new section of it is coded. So you're constantly going through these approval processes, and there was no drama, none. There was nothing with the App Store or Google Play this is 2019, so this is getting into the peak of insanity, that led me to believe that there would be any specific controversy around this. I had anticipated that there would be some of that, there are sometimes some men being like, oh, don't they have enough? Or, what about men-only spaces and things like that, which I'm not opposed to men-only spaces, but that was the pushback I was anticipating. I literally had no idea there'd be anything else, and there was no warning. But on the 7th of February 2020, we were in the beta testing phase. So it was live on the App Store and Google Play. A handful of women around the world knew about it. We were doing testing. The security wasn't all in place. It was full of bugs. It wasn't ready to be launched, but we were just ironing them all out. That's what beta testing is. And we woke up on the 7th of February to thousands upon thousands of men on it calling us transphobic, calling us TERFs. Like they didn't have a problem with a woman-only app per se. It was just these accusations of transphobia, and that's when I was first introduced to the concept of a TERF. It was like they were making these profiles saying "kill TERFs," and I had no idea. It was panic mode for about 48, 72 hours, and then I started going deep into research and of what was happening, and that's when I found out that there were these women around the world who were speaking up that I had not heard of prior to this, who were saying that not only are men claiming to be women, but there are really important places like governments and important institutions that are taking them seriously. And it's the day my world changed. My entire life changed that day. So everything that has followed from then, as crazy as it's been, it's in a sense not as crazy as that specific day, because nothing prepares you. At no point when we were developing the app did I go, hey, should we just check to find out if men are women in law? Who would naturally have that thought? You would never think that. So it was literally not something that entered into my mind. And it's not that I was like living under a rock and completely naive. I'd heard of like LGBT. I'd heard the word trans woman, but I suppose I was just being a good little liberal. I didn't question it. I'd heard of LGBT and I thought, well, I like the LGB. I support them. Okay, there's another letter. I didn't think that anyone was saying that men could be women. Not in my wildest nightmare.
I think what happened as well is it became mainstream very quickly, didn't it? It suddenly went from, because I'm to be honest, I'm one of those, like, you do you. As long as you don't negatively impact anyone else, do what you like. I don't care. I believe in freedom, so it would be hypocritical for me to if you want to be a cat and eat your dinner from a saucer on the floor, I couldn't care less, mate. Do what you like. But it then suddenly became, well, yeah, but you now need to refer to them as a cat, and you now need to, it kind of, I thought to myself then, why am I getting involved? It's got nothing to do with me.
Well, that's really my position on it. What somebody does and thinks in their own mind is really none of my business. I don't really care. So if a man wants to call himself a woman and wear a dress and that's what gets him out of bed in the morning, that's really not my business. I might have some personal thoughts about it and some opinions about it, as I'm entitled to. I might not like the reasons why he's doing it, if it's autogynephilia, if it's fetish, or if it is sort of this delusional gender dysphoria where I'm like, I think he needs some help to be grounded in reality. I'll have these different thoughts, but he can do it. The problem, literally the moment it becomes a problem, is when me, you, any of us are being forced to believe it. Because as you said, it's not freedom. Like, even in the court case that I'm involved in, I've said this so many times. I wish him well. Call yourself a woman. Okay, you just can't come into women-only spaces, and it's simply on the basis that you're not one.
No.
It's no other reason. It's not a character analysis. It's just you're not a woman, so you can't come in.
No, exactly. I mean, I think back, like I grew up in a bit of a punk rock scene in England. And so you had guys, there would be cross-dressers in there. Like that was, but when they went for a wee, you were stood next to them at the urinal. Like no one was trying to go and pretend they were anything that they weren't. It's just like, I feel like a woman today, so I'm dressing like a woman, I'm doing my makeup, I'm very pretty, well done. No one was trying to force anything on anyone. Now suddenly they are. I mean, you've alluded to there obviously of this court case, which, like I say, I find it kind of crazy. Can you tell us exactly what happened with this character, Roxan Tickle, which I'm sure is probably not the birth name, and how it became, a global story, I guess?
Yes. So basically, when we came under attack in February 2020, my mum and I, it's our company, and I'd said to her, "This is so ridiculous. This will blow over very quickly, and within a few months." Still at that point, I didn't know how long women had already been fighting back against this. I still didn't know the extent of it, but that, in my naivety, that's what I thought, because I just thought this is so stupid. So I was wrong about that. But so basically, we decided as a company to just tread water, and we ran it as like sort of this skeleton operation, just to keep it going and hoping that we would just get out the other side of it. And in that time, by sometime in 2021, this person by the name of Roxan Tickle came onto the app. I was monitoring it to make sure that it was women only, because men would constantly try to get on. And if they got past the security, we would remove them. It was a regular day at the office. So at some point I would have removed him. I have no recollection of it. And then I received an Australian Human Rights Commission complaint from him citing gender identity discrimination. And to settle it in the AHRC, I was told I had to let him on the app, let all men who claim to be women on the app go to sex and gender education, pay him $20,000, apologize, and moderate all content on the app so that men who claim to be women weren't offended by what women were saying. So not only did sort of they want to come in, they wanted to control it. And I just couldn't agree to any of it. I was like, absolutely no way. And on top of this, when I got the AHRC complaint and I was able to sort of connect the dots, I'd had 2 interactions with him beforehand, not knowing who he was. One of them was on Twitter. I had been defending a different female-only space, a very old rock pool was women only for about 140 years until the activist got hold of it in Sydney, and I was defending that. And we'd had this very brief interaction about female-only spaces where I was like, as I said, I wish you well, but female-only spaces are female-only. So he very much knew who I was just from that, because he then did a tweet saying, Sall Grover, CEO of Giggle, has just blocked me, which again wasn't personal. I block all trans activists, or especially at that time. This is pre-Elon owning at time when, we were very sensitive that we could just be destroyed by these people. So he tweeted that. So I'd had that interaction with him, but then also at some point at the end of 2021, just before the AHRC complaint, he had called and texted my phone. I had a missed call, and there was a text saying, "Hi, like, this is Roxy Tickle. I've been removed from the app," something to that effect. And I went, had a look on the Giggle server, and there was just this picture of a man. And I called my dad, and I was like, "This is a guy that we've blocked from the app, and he's called and texted my phone." No one else had ever done that, ever, in the history of it.
How did they get your number?
This is a very controversial point. In court, his side says that he got it from my email. For me, I'm like, but I don't have any recollection of ever sending him an email. I don't know. But even so, I don't know if that's how he got my number. I have no idea. He could have gotten my number from a different way. I don't know. I have no idea. But it really freaked me out, because there was just this, from my perspective, strange man who I'd never met, calling and texting my phone. And then I got the AHRC complaint. So that's how this all sort of started for me. And because I wouldn't settle in the AHRC, It escalated and he filed in federal court for gender identity discrimination. The Australian Human Rights Commission intervened in the case on his side. I had to raise for the first round. It was just over $500,000. We lost the first round, if you can believe it. The judge ruled in his favor, saying that I basically, even though I didn't know he had a gender identity, that was irrelevant. It was still discrimination on the basis of gender identity. It was just because he claimed to have one, that was enough for it to be gender identity discrimination. And so obviously I appealed. And just last week we had the hearing of that appeal. So it has been in total from the AHRC complaint day 3.5 years till now. Yeah.
Is there not more important things for these courts to be dealing with? It's insane. So what's the situation now then? Because it's called Giggle versus Tickle, isn't it? And that made me laugh. And I thought, oh, mate, I bet the media absolutely love that, especially the tabloid media, because, you know,
no, do you know
the
what?
Giggle Act versus this Roxan Tickle.
No, do you know what? I actually think the name has hindered it. I think a lot of people think that it's a silly little case and it's just about an app and it's some like hysterical woman and some, I don't know, other hysterical woman. That's how some people might see it. I don't know. But I do think that the name has hindered it a little bit because it sounds so ridiculous. It sounds like a puppet show. It's a pantomime, but it's actually really serious. It was actually the first direct sex versus gender identity discrimination case in the world. And this is the case in Australia to decide whether women have women's rights. And so it would be nice if it had a different name than Giggle v. Tickle, something that people couldn't sort of dismiss so easily. I think it's hindered it slightly, but it is stupid. And then my last name's Grover. It's a muppet. I mean, yes, Tickle's a ridiculous last name, but so is Grover. I mean, we can't choose our last names. So I'll defend him on that one then.
So what's the situation now then? Because you've appealed, rightly so, because it's absolutely ludicrous. Where does it stand at the moment?
So we had the hearing last week and it was fantastic. I would say, and from other accounts that I've read and my own assessment of it, I think we won the oral arguments. It's 3 judges that we were in front of. We went in there with facts and reality and the history and construction of the Act, basically saying that just because gender identity was put into the Sex Discrimination Act, which it was, does not mean that sex and women's rights and female spaces are removed. There's no evidence that they are. So we had very, very good and strong arguments and a lot of evidence, and they very much did go in there with gender ideology in legalese. It was just, he's a woman. They made an argument at one point saying that because he was wearing a V-neck T-shirt and had longish hair, that's why I should have known he was a woman. And you
okay. How does Sinead O'Connor fit into that?
The funniest part was I was sitting there in federal court listening to this and I'm looking at my dad who was wearing a V-neck T-shirt and I was like, Dad.
Dad's on the app.
Well, I mean, it's just, this is the thing with gender ideology, though. I mean, you make these ludicrous claims and you're just having a lot of trust that the listener is going to buy into the nonsense. And unfortunately, they have succeeded in that a lot of the times. But, I mean, you're just sitting there going, on what science has settled that V-neck T-shirt's a woman? What is this? How is this part of a womanhood? What are you talking about? Like, it's just so ridiculous, but that's what we heard. And now we wait for 3 judges to make a decision based on that. I'm confident about this round. Obviously, you always have a little bit of humility and going like, it could go the other way. And I'm mentally and emotionally prepared for that as much as you can, but it definitely should go in our favor this time. If it doesn't, we will appeal to the High Court, which is the highest court you possibly can in Australia. I suspect it's going there anyway, because if we win, the other side is very likely to take it to the High Court. So, of course, in terms of the marathon that I'm in, I'm only 2/3 of the way through it. So what's currently just over 3.5-year process is going to end up being about a 5-year process, just over 5 years, to establish what a woman is.
It's insane. It's insane. I feel for you, but you seem to me like quite a warrior person, really. Like, do you know what I mean? So actually,
No, I'm stubborn. I'm just stubborn. When I know I'm right, I'm really stubborn. If I don't know I'm right, or if I don't have an opinion on something, I always just sort of sit back. But when I know 100% that I'm right on something, wild horses can't take me away from it. And I know I'm right on this. Men are not women. It's that simple.
I hope you're enjoying the show so far. I'm sure if you're watching this, you're very much aware of the growing surveillance state emerging all around us. Whatever you do, you're being watched and your data being harvested. This is why Glenn and Eric Mader formed the Privacy Academy. Join the community designed to help overwhelmed, non-techie people like me learn how to get private online. Head over to privacyacademy.com/Ike and learn how to exit the surveillance state with regular webinars exclusively for you. Now, back to the show. But that's good, because I think, to be honest, and you can apply this to other activists as well that try and cancel people and get money out of people and whatever. They target those that they think, will roll over. And unfortunately, most people will roll over and pay the money and apologise and do all that kind of stuff. The fact that you're not is great.
I do wonder if, there are times where the other side is going, we thought she would have given up by now. And I'm like, no, I'm that stubborn. All you had to do was ask my mum and dad how stubborn I have been for my entire life. And you would have gone, you picked the wrong one. I've always been this way. And yeah, I mean, it's not even just in this case, it's the other crazy element of it. It's not just the woman's rights. Because he's coming after me for damages. He's coming after me for $200,000 in damages as well, claiming harm. And one of the things that it's about is that during cross-examination in trial, I laughed at a caricature of him that I was shown by his barrister. I just had this involuntary sort of reflex, and I laughed at it, and the judge awarded damages on that. So that's the sort of the other outrageous thing that we're dealing with, of that if in Australia it is decided in the federal court that you can be financially punished for an honest reaction you have while giving evidence in a witness box, that completely changes the justice system. So for me, what started as just wanting to create a female-only space in the palm of your hand has escalated to be involved in these two very important points of law that have come to a head in this, yeah.
You'd think that Roxanne having a V-neck T-shirt would know how stubborn a woman can be, wouldn't you? Having legally become a woman by wearing a V-neck T-shirt. How bad has Australia got with this stuff, Sal? Because I follow you on social media and I see you post news articles, it feels like daily, about people losing their jobs for saying he instead of she, completely innocently.
Well, do you know what? We're actually a step in the right direction, that it's now being reported on, because we've had as close to as complete censorship on this issue as you can get. The Australian newspaper is really starting to do a great job on it. For a few years there, they were just, they just didn't understand the issue, and it wasn't worth getting them to write anything. They've really come to the table with it. Sky News here, which is they're not like Sky News in the UK. They're more sort of like a Fox News in the US. They are quite good on the issue, but that's it. That's all we've got who will actually give anyone like me at the time of day. And so you do go on there knowing that you're kind of preaching to the choir, because obviously the people watching it are on side, and the people who are against us would never watch those programs. And so from that, you get called far right and all of that nonsense. We all know what that's like. But you have to make a choice. Do I sit in silence, or do I go somewhere where I can at least be heard and state what's going on? But so the fact that there are people getting fired, but that's being reported on, is significantly different to how it was even 18 months ago. They weren't reporting on anything and people were getting fired then. My argument is that Australia is one of the most captured countries in the world because our laws were actually changed. In the UK, women were able to fight the changes. We didn't know about them when they happened here, or most women didn't. I think we're the only country you could compare us to is Canada.
That's never a good thing.
Not anymore, no. So the Australia and Canada, and I've got a theory about it as well. Australians and Canadians are quite similar, even though we live in opposite climates, but our lifestyles are quite similar. We're quite outdoorsy. Canadians go skiing and hiking, Australians go to the beach. And so we're quite distracted by our lifestyle. And we're not sitting in pubs and sort of reading the newspaper and talking about politics because we've got other things to do. Whereas the UK, just based on the weather, it's the hobby is sort of sitting and talking, which, don't get me wrong, is the lifestyle that I actually do prefer. But it just means there's a complacency in both countries that the UK fortunately doesn't have, that I would say UK citizens on a whole are much more engaged in politics than for the most part we are here, unfortunately. So
I think you make a really important point there in terms of the media coverage of it. Because I think if most people, the overwhelming majority of people are on your side on this, obviously, total no-brainer, obviously. But so many people won't know about it. And I even in the UK, it's bigger in the UK now, but even going back a decade in the UK, you'd talk to people and you'd say things like, people are getting sacked for not using the right pronouns or whatever, and people would look at you and go, no one's losing their job for not calling a boy a girl. That's not happening. And you're like, no, it is. But it's so unbelievable and farcical, people won't have it. And now suddenly here they are. So do you think maybe that's part of the problem in Australia then, that actually people don't necessarily know just how insane this is?
Yeah, but I think that's, as I said before, also with the Giggle v Tickle name, it just makes it exacerbates the absurdity of it, because you let people go, well, that can't possibly be serious. And then it's like, well, that can't possibly be a man wanting to go into a woman-only space who would take that seriously. And so it's just so easy to dismiss. But when you go, no, this is actually happening and it's really serious, I find that a lot of people don't take it seriously until it affects them personally in some way or affects someone who's very close to them personally. So you can have 1 degree of separation. But, and sorry, that's happening more and more as more and more sort of overreach happens. Even just in the past few weeks, in my situation, I've had a whole new sort of bundle of people contact me because the line for them was the Australian Human Rights Commission not intervening into the case. These people didn't have a problem with that. But when it was revealed via the Australian newspaper that the Australian Human Rights Commission was arguing that men who claimed to be women needed pregnancy protections in law, that was the line. This is, you can read it on the federal court website. You just have to go to their submission that would have been in the last week of July, first week of August. It was their final submission, a supplementary submission. They're saying that what they would say trans women, because they're women, they need pregnancy protections because they could be perceived to be pregnant. And so therefore they need discrimination protection for that. And you're going, okay, so the Australian Human Rights Commission is trying to give men legal protections that they don't need while taking away women's legal protections that we do need. That's where we are. And so when that story broke here, that opened the floodgates a little bit of people going, okay, that was my final straw. That's ridiculous. And I'm like, yeah, cool. Finally you realize that this is as crazy as we've been saying. We haven't been crying wolf. Every claim that gender ideology makes is a lie. Every part of it is nonsense. It doesn't mean that we can't have sympathy for some people who are experiencing some kind of discomfort that is obviously causing them pain, whether has come naturally to them or they've been indoctrinated into it. I have a lot of sympathy for those people, and I think they need a lot of help. But I don't think indulging this is helping literally anyone. It's tearing society apart. I mean, look, as you said, lawsuits are distracted by this, like these expensive, crazy lawsuits we have to go through. But you just look in the last 10 years, art has suffered, movies, TV, books, they've all suffered. Everyone's just too scared to say the wrong thing. You can't write about something you don't have a lived experience in. I just think this whole zeitgeist has been just a real sort of dark ages of society and humanity. Just a little dark ages.
I agree. For me, with this, I'm the same as you, by the way. I have absolute sympathy for people. I'm not one of these people that mocks and all that kind of stuff. I have sympathy. until you start bullying people, and then I look at you differently. But it's like it's the only mental condition that you would appease. And I think about it, and I think, if someone comes up to you and they're 4.5, 5 stone, they're skin and bones, and they're telling you how fat they feel because they have body dysphoria in terms of weight, you would not go, yeah, you're fatty, you are a fatty. And if you say that they're thin and underweight, then you're a bigot. Like, that would never happen. Yet in this scenario, it's the agreed upon position.
But even in that scenario, this happened at the Tavistock in the UK. There were situations where anorexic or bulimic teenage girls were going there with that as their sort of, it's called a comorbidity. So that was sort of their pre-existing condition. But they were told that them starving themselves was because they didn't want to have hips or a woman's body, so it meant that they wanted to be a man. They were transing them that way. So that's how evil and horrific this ideology is. So history will not be kind to gender ideology at all, because not one part of it is true. And what it has done, how it's made really a whole generation fixate on their identity and mental health, that you just want to go scream and go, do you know how much more fun life is when you get sort of outside yourself and you go and find purpose and you do things and you achieve things and you just make yourself useful? Like that, how much more fun life is. But if you're just sitting there constantly thinking about your identity and your pronouns and being misgendered and your gender expression, it's like, what a miserable life that must be. Like, I get why they're angry.
It's so true. So true. I'm the same. People have these bits, like you say, that they focus on in terms of who they are. And I'm just Gareth, mate. I need to identify as all these things. It's ridiculous to me. So, thank you so much for joining us. But finally, how does this end? Do you think? Do you think you'll end up leaving Australia, or do you think Australia can be saved essentially?
It's so funny. I'd had a conversation with a journalist just the other day where they'd asked me that, and I had said, look, we've had conversations about it. Like, who wouldn't have a conversation about that when you are being taken to court effectively by the government? I don't want to do that. I lived in America for 10 years. I have left. I've lived in London for 18 months. I was just sort of the cliched Australian who went over there. I've lived abroad. I really like at this stage of my life living in my home country. This is where I'm from. The thing is that some days it is really, really hard, and I don't ever want to abandon it or anything. But I mean, I don't know, maybe another break is something that might be good. But the free speech, the internet censorship that they're trying to bring in, and women's rights, cost of living, all of that sort of stuff, and they're not doing anything about it. It is all concerning, and it's something that plays on your mind. I mean, the second there's people in England who are leaving, it's just something where you go, if life's short, if you're not happy where you are, maybe leave. But I don't know. The grass greener on the other side. Every place has problems. No place is perfect, and I would never forgive myself if I would never do this. I would never leave Australia and just sort of go, all the women in Australia, I'll go find women's rights elsewhere. Like, I would never do that. But it would just be, say if I've got another 18 months of having to go through the High Court process, which I'm willing to do it, it's just maybe I could have a little bit more fun and opportunity if I wasn't here during the process. I could always come back for the things that I need. But I've dedicated the last 3.5 years of my life to litigation, and I can tell you right now, it's hell. You wouldn't wish it upon your worst enemy. I would never sue anyone. It's not fun. And it's just, litigation is long, it's boring, it's frustrating. And, the law is different from how we talk in society. They've got to work within confines of the law. And sometimes it's maddening, and you feel like you're losing your mind. So I'm looking forward to it being over, and I'm looking forward to moving on. I just want to run an app for women. Like, my wants here are quite simple, and I'm going to continue and finish and achieve what I set out to do. It's part of the reason why I fight for it, beyond all of the other obviously much more important issues. But no, I want to run a female in this space. That's what I want to do. So if I have to leave to do it, that's what I'll do. But I really hope that it never comes to that.
Yeah, hopefully it won't come to that. I'm the same. I went to Mexico recently, and there's a lot of COVID refugees, as they describe themselves. And they said to me, you know, when are you and your family leaving England because of the way England's going? I was like, I'm not going anywhere, mate. Like, I'm an Englishman. You know, not like a bulldog tattoo type of guy, but I'm an Englishman. I want to stay and fight. My kids are born here, you know, that's it. But thank you so much for joining us, Sall. I really love talking to you. And I know it's not about luck, but either way, best of luck with the case. Hopefully these three judges have a brain cell between them and rule in your favour.
Thank you so much.
That's all for the free section of this week's Gareth Icke Tonight. If you would like to watch my interviews with Peter McCullough and John Leake, plus Simon Wilson, please click the link in the description and head over to Ickonic.com. You can subscribe instantly for just £1.99. Good night.
They don't get paid enough. For people with disabilities, carers provide a vital role to, not only to their existence, but to their potential.
The CDC is reporting to us that over 19,000 deaths have been reported of Americans who've died shortly after the vaccine. About 1,000 have died right in the vaccine center a few hours later.